The rain hammered against the windshield of Blake Ingram's battered Honda Civic as he waited in the grocery store parking lot. His 6-year-old son Danny asleep in the booster seat behind him, tiny snores barely audible over the downpour. Blake checked his phone for the third time, doing the mental math that had become his nightly ritual. $73 left until Friday's paycheck. Groceries already bought and loaded in the trunk, gas tank half full, Danny's school lunch money set aside. They would make it. They always did. He was about to start the engine when he noticed a figure standing in the rain near a sleek black Mercedes, looking utterly lost. The woman wore an expensive-looking cream blazer that was now soaked through, her dark hair plastered to her face as she held her phone up like it might somehow divine the answer to her problem. Blake watched her for a moment, then glanced back at Danny, still sleeping soundly despite the storm. The man his late wife, Sarah, had married would not have hesitated. The man Sarah had believed him to be would help. Blake grabbed his worn rain jacket from the passenger seat and stepped out into the deluge. The cold hit him immediately, but he jogged over to where the woman stood, looking increasingly desperate. "Excuse me," he called out over the rain. "You look lost. Can I help?" The woman turned, and Blake found himself looking into striking green eyes that seemed to assess him in an instant. She was probably in her early 30s, with elegant features and a presence that suggested she was not accustomed to being caught off guard by something as simple as getting lost. "I'm trying to find Riverside Medical Center," she said, her voice carrying a note of frustration. "My GPS keeps losing signal, and every person I've asked has given me different directions. I have an important meeting there in 20 minutes, and I have no idea where I'm going." Blake knew exactly where the hospital was. He had spent too many nights there 2 years ago, holding Sarah's hand as cancer slowly took her from him. The route was burned into his memory. "I know exactly where it is," he said, rain dripping from his hair. "It's tricky to find if you don't know the area. You're going to want to take a left out of this parking lot, then go straight through 3 lights. At the 4th light, you'll see a gas station on your right. That's where it gets confusing. Most people think you turn there, but you actually go 1 more block and turn right at the elementary school. The hospital is about a mile down that road on your left. Big brick building, can't miss it." The woman pulled out her phone, trying to type the directions, but the screen was wet and not responding. She made a sound of pure exasperation. "Left out of the lot, 3 lights straight, 4th light has a gas station, go 1 more block past it, turn right at the school, mile down on the left," Blake repeated more slowly. "The elementary school is called Riverside Elementary. It has a blue sign. That's your landmark." "Thank you," she said, genuine relief flooding her features. "Truly. I was starting to think I'd have to reschedule, and this meeting is crucial. No problem, drive safe. The roads get slick in this weather." Blake turned to head back to his car, but her voice stopped him. "Wait. What's your name?" He turned back, confused. Blake Ingram." "Thank you, Blake Ingram. I'm Olivia Garrison. I won't forget this." Blake gave her a small wave and hurried back to his car, sliding into the driver's seat and shaking the water from his hair. Danny stirred in the back. "Dad." "Where were we?" "Just helped someone, buddy. Let's get you home and into some dry pajamas." Blake started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, completely unaware that the brief encounter would change his life. 3 days later, Blake was working his shift at Henderson's hardware store, helping an elderly customer find the right size of wood screws, when someone cleared their throat behind him. He turned and found himself face to face with Olivia Garrison. She looked different from the rain-soaked woman in the parking lot. Now she wore an impeccably tailored navy suit, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun, diamond studs in her ears. She looked like she had just walked out of a boardroom, which, Blake suspected, she probably had. "Blake Ingram," she said with a smile that seemed both professional and genuinely warm. "I was hoping I'd find you here. How did your name tag at the grocery store?" she said. "It said you worked here. I wanted to thank you properly for your help the other day." I made it to my meeting on time, and it went exceptionally well. Blake was aware of his own appearance in comparison. His Henderson's polo shirt with the frayed collar, his work jeans with the paint stain on the knee, his scuffed work boots. That's great. I'm glad the directions worked out. But you really didn't need to come all the way here. I know I didn't need to, Olivia said. But I wanted to. You took time out of your evening, got soaked in the rain just to help a stranger. That's not common. I'd like to buy you coffee or lunch, whatever works for your schedule. Blake glanced at the clock. His break wasn't for another hour, and even then, he usually spent it scarfing down the sandwich he brought from home in the break room. I appreciate the offer, but I'm working until 6 today. Dinner then. There was something in her persistence that both flattered and unsettled Blake. He had not been on anything resembling a date since Sarah died. The thought of sitting across from this obviously successful, put-together woman while he talked about his life as a single dad working retail and odd jobs felt absurd. I have a son, Blake said, as if that explained everything. 6 years old. I need to pick him up from after-school care by 6:30. Then bring him, Olivia said without hesitation. I'll meet you at Giovanni's at 7. It's the Italian place on 5th Street. My treat. I insist. Before Blake could protest further, she was gone, leaving only the faint scent of expensive perfume and his coworker Marcus staring at him with his mouth hanging open. Dude, Marcus said. That was Olivia Garrison, as in Garrison Industries, as in one of the wealthiest people in the state. And she just asked you out. Blake felt his stomach drop. That can't be right. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Blake the screen. There was Olivia's face on a business website with the title Chief Executive Officer under her name. The article was about her taking over her family's manufacturing company 5 years ago and tripling its revenue. That's definitely her, Marcus said. What did you do to get her attention? I gave her directions in a parking lot. Marcus laughed like Blake had told a joke. Yeah, okay. Keep your secrets. But seriously, you're going to dinner, right? A woman like that doesn't offer twice. Blake spent the rest of his shift in a mild state of panic. What was he doing? This was clearly some kind of thank you gesture, a rich person's way of being polite. It wasn't a date. It couldn't be a date. People like Olivia Garrison didn't date people like Blake Ingram. They existed in different worlds, different tax brackets, different realities. But when 6 o'clock came and Blake picked up Danny from the after-school program, he found himself telling his son they were going out for dinner. Like at a restaurant? Danny asked, his brown eyes going wide. They usually saved restaurants for special occasions, birthdays, and report cards with good grades. Yeah, buddy. A nice lady I helped wants to say thank you by buying us dinner. Is she pretty? Danny asked with the blunt curiosity of a 6-year-old. Blake thought of those striking green eyes. Yeah, she is. Is she going to be my new mom? The question hit Blake like a punch to the chest. No, Danny, she's just being nice. We're going to have dinner, say thank you, and that's all. But as Blake changed out of his work clothes and into the nicest jeans and button-down shirt he owned, as he made sure Danny's hair was combed and his face was clean, he couldn't quite silence the small voice in his head that wondered what if. Giovanni's was more upscale than anywhere Blake usually took Danny, the kind of place with cloth napkins and a wine list. Olivia was already there, seated at a corner table, and she stood as they approached. She had changed out of her suit into dark jeans and a soft-looking sweater, making herself look more approachable, though the expensive watch on her wrist gave away her status. You must be Danny, she said, smiling down at his son. I'm Olivia. Your dad really helped me out the other day. Danny looked up at Blake, then back at Olivia. He's good at helping people. He fixed Mr. Patterson's fence last week and wouldn't take any money for it. Danny, Blake said, feeling his face heat up. That sounds like your dad is a very good person, Olivia said, and something in her tone made Blake look at her more carefully. She wasn't being patronizing. She genuinely meant it. They settled into their seats, and Blake tried not to think about the prices on the menu. Olivia had set her treat, but still. Danny was enchanted by the breadsticks the waiter brought, and Blake spent the first few minutes making sure his son used his napkin and didn't talk with his mouth full. "So," Olivia said after they had ordered, "tell me about yourself, Blake Ingram." "What's your story?" Blake took a sip of his water, buying time. What did he say? That he was 32 years old and felt 50, that he had planned on going back to school for engineering before Sarah got sick, that he spent most of his energy just trying to keep his head above water and be the father Danny needed. "Not much to tell," he said finally. "I work at Henderson's Hardware. Pick up odd jobs on the weekends for extra money, raise this troublemaker." He ruffled Danny's hair affectionately. "Pretty simple life." "I don't think any life with a child is simple," Olivia said. "Are you married?" "Widower. 2 years now." The word still felt strange in his mouth, too formal for the raw grief that sometimes still ambushed him at unexpected moments. Something shifted in Olivia's expression, a softness that hadn't been there before. "I'm so sorry. That must be incredibly difficult." "We manage," Blake said, not wanting to dwell on it. "What about you? What does a CEO do that requires driving around in the rain looking for hospitals?" Olivia laughed, and the sound was surprisingly unguarded. "Fair question. I was meeting with the hospital board about a donation. Garrison Industries has a community outreach program, and we're funding a new pediatric wing. But my usual driver was sick, and I insisted I could find it myself." "Clearly, I was wrong. You're building a new wing for sick kids?" Danny piped up, suddenly interested. "We're helping to pay for it," Olivia said, "so doctors can take care of children better." "That's cool," Danny said. "My mom was sick. The doctors tried really hard, but they couldn't fix her." Blake saw the surprise flash across Olivia's face, followed immediately by compassion. She reached across the table, not quite touching Danny's hand, but close. "I bet your mom was very brave, and I bet she loved you very much." "She did," Danny said matter-of-factly. "She made Dad promise to always put extra cheese on my sandwiches, just how I like them. He remembers every day." Blake felt his throat tighten. He had forgotten he had told Danny that story, forgotten that his son paid attention to those small details. "Your dad sounds like he keeps his promises," Olivia said, but she was looking at Blake now, and there was something in her eyes he could not quite read. The dinner continued with easier conversation. Olivia asked Danny about school, and his son lit up talking about his first-grade class and his best friend Marcus Jr., named after Blake's coworker. She listened with genuine attention, asking follow-up questions, laughing at Danny's rambling stories about recess and art class. Blake found himself relaxing, actually enjoying the meal, watching Olivia interact with his son with a natural ease that surprised him. When Danny excused himself to go to the bathroom, Blake escorted him and then returned to find Olivia looking thoughtful. "He's a great kid," she said. "You should be proud." "I am. He's the best thing in my life." "I can tell." Olivia hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "Blake, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't usually do this. I don't usually seek out strangers who helped me. But there was something about that moment in the parking lot. You didn't have to stop. You had your son sleeping in the car. You could have driven away. But you got out in the rain to help someone you didn't know, and you didn't ask for anything in return. That's rare." Blake did not know what to say. He just shrugged. "It was just directions. It was more than that, and this is probably forward of me, but I'd like to see you again. Just us, maybe, without the pressure of a 6-year-old asking if I'm going to be his new mom." Blake felt his heart skip. "He asked you that, in the bathroom," Olivia said with a small smile. "Very directly. I told him I was your friend and we'd have to see what happens." "I'm not really in your league," Blake said, the words coming out before he could stop them. "I'm a hardware store clerk with a kid." "You're a CEO. This doesn't make sense." "Maybe it doesn't have to make sense," Olivia said. "Maybe it just has to feel right, and something about this feels right to me. If you're not interested, I understand, but if you are, even a little bit, I'd like to take you out for real, just the two of us." Blake looked at this beautiful, successful, confident woman and tried to figure out what she could possibly see in him. But then he thought about the way she had listened to Danny, the way she had looked at Blake like he mattered, like he was interesting. He thought about how long it had been since anyone had looked at him that way. "Friday night," he heard himself say. "I can get my neighbor to watch Danny. Nothing too fancy, though. I'm not a suit and tie kind of guy." Olivia's smile was radiant. Friday night and Blake. You don't need to be anything other than exactly who you are. The rest of the week passed in a blur of anticipation and anxiety. Blake found himself thinking about Olivia at odd moments, when he was restocking shelves or helping customers, when he was making Danny's lunch or reading bedtime stories. He tried to tell himself not to get his hopes up, that one date did not mean anything, but hope was a stubborn thing. Friday evening arrived with crisp autumn air and clear skies. Blake's neighbor, Mrs. Chen, was delighted to watch Danny, who had grown comfortable with her over the past 2 years of irregular babysitting. "You look nice, Mrs." Chen said approvingly, taking in Blake's dark jeans and the navy sweater he had worn to Sarah's company Christmas party years ago. "This woman, she is good to you." "I barely know her," Blake admitted. "But yeah, she seems good." Olivia had suggested they meet at a casual tapas place downtown, and Blake was grateful for the choice. When he arrived, she was already there, wearing jeans and a burgundy blouse, her hair down around her shoulders. She looked beautiful but approachable, and Blake felt some of his nervousness ease. "Hi," she said, standing to greet him. For a moment they both hesitated, then she leaned in and kissed his cheek. The gesture felt natural and warm. "Hi yourself," Blake said, sliding into the seat across from her. They ordered wine and small plates to share, and the conversation flowed more easily than Blake had expected. Olivia asked about his work, and he found himself telling her about the regular customers he had come to know, the satisfaction of helping someone find exactly what they needed for their project. She listened like it mattered, like his job was as important as running a company. "What about you?" Blake asked. "What's it like running a business?" Olivia leaned back, swirling her wine glass. "Honestly, it's exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. I took over from my father 5 years ago, and there were a lot of people who thought I'd run it into the ground. A lot of pressure to prove myself, but I love the challenge. I love building something, creating jobs, making decisions that affect hundreds of people's lives." "Do you ever get scared, making decisions that big, all the time?" Olivia said. "But I've learned that fear isn't the enemy. Doubt is. You can be afraid and still move forward. It's when you start doubting yourself that things fall apart." Blake thought about that, about the years of doubt since Sarah died, doubting his ability to be enough for Danny, doubting his choices, doubting his worth. "That's good advice," he said quietly. The evening stretched on, and Blake found himself sharing things he rarely talked about. He told Olivia about Sarah, about the whirlwind romance and quick marriage, about watching her fight cancer with a ferocity that had both inspired and broken him. He told her about the dark months after she died, when getting out of bed felt impossible, but he did it anyway because Danny needed him. Olivia listened to all of it, her green eyes never leaving his face, her hand reaching across the table to rest on his at one point, a gesture of comfort that felt like a lifeline. "You're stronger than you think," she said when he finished. "Raising a child alone while working full-time and keeping your head above water, that's extraordinary, Blake." "It doesn't feel extraordinary. It feels like barely surviving most days." Surviving is extraordinary when the alternative is giving up, and you haven't given up. Your son is happy and healthy and clearly loves you. That's success by any measure. Blake felt something loosen in his chest, some knot of tension he had been carrying for so long he had forgotten it was there. When Olivia talked about her own life, Blake heard the loneliness beneath the success. She had poured everything into the company, she said. Her relationships had suffered. Her last serious boyfriend had left 2 years ago, frustrated by her long hours and dedication to work. She had convinced herself that was fine, that she did not need romance when she had professional fulfillment. "But then I got lost in that parking lot," she said with a self-deprecating smile. "And a kind stranger helped me, and I couldn't stop thinking about him, about how he looked soaked from the rain but didn't complain. About how he had his son sleeping in the car but still took time to make sure I had clear directions. I kept thinking about what kind of person does that." "A regular person," Blake said. "Anyone would have helped." "That's where you're wrong," Olivia said. "I stood in that rain for 10 minutes before you stopped. At least a dozen people walked past me. You were the only one who helped." The night ended outside the restaurant, the autumn air cold enough that their breath fogged. Blake walked Olivia to her car, and they stood there for a moment, neither wanting the evening to end. "I had a really good time," Olivia said. "I know this is complicated. Our lives are different, but I want to see where this goes, if you do." Blake thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea. The differences in their backgrounds, the logistics of dating as a single parent, the fear of opening his heart again and risking the pain of loss. But then he thought about how she had made him laugh tonight, how easy it had been to talk to her, how alive he had felt. "I want to see where it goes too," he said. Olivia's smile was like sunshine. She stepped closer, rising on her toes, and kissed him. It was soft and sweet and tentative, a question and an answer all at once. Blake's hands found her waist, pulling her closer, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this: the warmth of her lips, the soft sound of her breath, the feeling of possibility blooming in his chest. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. "I'll call you tomorrow," Olivia said. "I'll be waiting." Blake drove home feeling like a teenager, giddy and nervous and hopeful. He paid Mrs. Chen and checked on Danny, who was sleeping soundly, then sat in his living room for a long time, just thinking. He had not expected this, had not expected to feel this way again. But here it was, undeniable and terrifying and wonderful. The next morning, Danny asked immediately if Blake had fun on his date. "I did," Blake admitted, making pancakes for breakfast. "Are you going to see her again?" "I hope so." "Good," Danny said decisively. "I liked her. She was nice to me, and she made you smile big." Blake ruffled his son's hair, overwhelmed with love for this perceptive, accepting little human. "You okay with Dad dating someone?" Danny considered this seriously, chewing his pancake. "Will you still have time for me?" "Always," Blake said firmly. "You're my number one, buddy." "That never changes." "Then I'm okay with it. But Dad?" "Yeah, if you marry her, we'll be rich, right? Can we get a puppy?" Blake laughed, the sound echoing through their small kitchen. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." But as the weeks passed, Blake found himself thinking about the future more than he had in years. Olivia called him the next day, as promised, and they talked for an hour while Danny played in his room. She called again the day after that, and the day after that. They fell into a pattern of nightly phone calls, sharing the details of their days, learning each other's rhythms and habits. Their second date was mini golf, Blake's suggestion, and Olivia was delightfully competitive and terrible at pudding. Their third date was a museum, Olivia's choice, and Blake discovered he enjoyed modern art more than he expected when she explained the pieces with infectious enthusiasm. They kept their relationship quiet at first, both of them learning to navigate what it meant to blend their different worlds. Olivia started coming by the hardware store during Blake's breaks, and they would sit in his car eating takeout and talking. She never seemed to mind the less than glamorous setting, never complained about his beat-up Civic or the way his work boots tracked sawdust everywhere. 3 weeks into dating, Blake brought Danny along to the park where he and Olivia were meeting, wanting to see how they all fit together. He need not have worried. Olivia showed up in jeans and sneakers, ready to play. She pushed Danny on the swings, helped him across the monkey bars, and sat with him in the sandbox building elaborate castles. Danny's laughter rang through the air, and Blake felt his heart expand watching them together. "She's pretty cool," Danny announced that night at bedtime. "She knows all about dinosaurs, and she said maybe we could visit her office sometime and see where she works." You like her then? Yeah, Dad, I like her a lot. Do you love her? The question caught Blake off guard. Did he? It had only been 3 weeks. But he thought about how his day felt incomplete without hearing her voice, how she had seamlessly become part of his thoughts and plans. He thought about how she made him want to be better, do more, hope for bigger things. I think I might, Blake said honestly. Is that okay? Danny nodded sleepily. Mom would want you to be happy. She told me that before she died. She said I had to make sure you didn't stay sad forever. Blake felt tears prick his eyes. Mom was pretty smart. The smartest, Danny agreed, already drifting off. Blake sat with his sleeping son for a long time, thinking about Sarah, about the life they had planned, and the life he was living now. He wondered if she really would approve of Olivia, if she would be happy that he was moving forward. He liked to think she would. Sarah had always wanted the best for him, had always pushed him to dream bigger than his circumstances. In some ways, Olivia reminded him of Sarah, that same fierce determination, that same refusal to accept limitations. A month into their relationship, Olivia invited Blake and Danny to her house for dinner. Blake had been curious about where she lived, had tried to imagine it, but nothing prepared him for the reality. Her home was a modern masterpiece overlooking the river, all glass and clean lines and expensive furniture. Danny's eyes went huge as they walked through the front door. This is like a house from TV, he whispered to Blake. Olivia heard and laughed. I know it's a bit much. My father built it for my mother as an anniversary gift. When he retired and moved to Florida, I bought it from him. Honestly, it's way too big for one person, but I love the light. She had cooked dinner herself, not takeout or catering, and Blake was touched by the effort. They ate at her dining room table with the river visible through the windows. And the food was good, even if Olivia admitted the chicken was a bit dry. After dinner, Olivia showed Danny her movie room, complete with a massive screen and incredibly comfortable recliners. She let him pick the movie, and they watched an animated film about dragons while Blake sat next to Olivia on the couch, her hand in his, feeling a contentment he had not known in years. Danny fell asleep before the movie ended, curled up in one of the recliners, and Blake carefully carried him out to the car. When he came back inside, Olivia was in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. You don't have to do that, Blake said. Let me help. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, and when the kitchen was clean, Olivia turned to face him. I need to tell you something, she said, and Blake's stomach dropped at her serious tone. Okay. I'm falling in love with you. The words came out in a rush. I know it's fast, and I know our situations are complicated, but I need you to know. I think about you constantly. I rearrange my schedule hoping to see you. I've started buying tools I don't need just to have an excuse to come to the hardware store. And Danny, he's wonderful, and I love seeing you two together. I just needed you to know how I feel. Blake stared at her, his heart pounding. Olivia! You don't have to say anything back, she rushed on. I just wanted to be honest. Olivia, Blake said again, stepping closer and taking her face in his hands. I'm falling in love with you too. I didn't think I could feel this way again. I didn't think I was allowed to. But you've made me want things I thought I had given up on. You've made me feel like myself again. The kiss they shared was different from the others, deeper and more certain, a promise of things to come. They ended up on her couch, kissing like teenagers, hands wandering but staying respectful, both aware that Danny was asleep in the car and Blake needed to get him home to bed. Stay, Olivia whispered against his lips. Both of you, I have guest rooms, stay the night. Blake hesitated, then nodded. Something about the offer felt significant, like a threshold being crossed. He carried Danny up to one of the guest rooms while Olivia found extra toothbrushes and laid out towels. When Danny was settled, still in his clothes because Blake had not thought to bring pajamas, Blake found Olivia in the hallway. Come here, she said, leading him to the master bedroom. They lay together on top of the covers, fully clothed, just holding each other and talking in hushed voices about their hopes and fears. Olivia talked about the pressure of her position, the constant scrutiny, the fear that she would make a wrong decision and hurt the company her father had built. Blake talked about his worries for Danny, about being enough, about giving his son the life he deserved. "You're already giving him the life he deserves," Olivia said. "You're giving him love and stability and a father who shows up every single day. That's everything." "I want to give him more, though. I want him to go to college without worrying about money. I want him to have opportunities I never had." "Then we'll make that happen," Olivia said, and the way she said we made Blake's heart skip. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and Blake woke in the early morning with sunlight streaming through the windows and Olivia's head on his chest. He lay there, not wanting to move, not wanting to break the spell. This felt like happiness. This felt like home. The sound of small footsteps made them both stir, and Danny appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "Dad, are we still at Olivia's house?" "Yeah, buddy, we spent the night. Is that okay?" Danny nodded, climbing up onto the bed between them. "Can we have pancakes?" Olivia laughed. "I think I can manage pancakes." They spent the morning together, easy and domestic, and Blake felt the last of his reservations crumbling. This could work. They could make this work. Over the next few months, they settled into a relationship that felt both extraordinary and perfectly normal. Olivia adjusted her schedule to have dinner with Blake and Danny at least twice a week. Blake started letting her help with some expenses, swallowing his pride enough to accept when she insisted on paying for Danny's new winter coat or covering the bill when they went out to eat. She was careful not to overstep, always asking Blake first, always respecting his role as Danny's father. Blake met Olivia's parents when they came to visit for Thanksgiving. Her father, Gerald, was a gruff man who clearly adored his daughter, and her mother, Patricia, was warm and welcoming. They were curious about Blake, asking questions about his background and his intentions, but not in an unkind way. "He makes me happy," Olivia told them over dinner. "Happier than I've been in years." "Then that's enough for us," Patricia said, reaching over to pat Blake's hand. "Anyone who can make our daughter smile like that is welcome in this family." Gerald was more reserved, pulling Blake aside after dinner while Olivia and her mother were in the kitchen. "My daughter is important to me," he said bluntly. "She's worked hard for everything she has." "I need to know you're not with her for the money." Blake met his eyes steadily. "I have my own money, not much of it, but enough. I support my son. I take care of my responsibilities. Olivia's success is impressive, but that's not why I'm with her. I'm with her because she's kind and smart and makes me want to be better. I'm with her because my son lights up when she walks in the room. I'm with her because I love her." Gerald studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Good answer. Take care of her." "I will." Christmas came, and Blake agonized over what to get Olivia. She could buy herself anything she wanted. What did you give someone who had everything? In the end, he decided on something personal. He took his favorite photo of the three of them, taken at the park on a day when they had been flying kites, and had it professionally framed with a small engraving on the frame, "Where we are is home." When Olivia opened it on Christmas morning at his apartment, her eyes filled with tears. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Blake, it's absolutely perfect." She gave him a watch, nothing too expensive or flashy, but with their initials engraved on the back. For Danny, she had gotten a microscope he had been wanting and about a dozen dinosaur books. Blake watched his son's joy and felt overwhelming gratitude for this woman who had walked into their lives. That night, after Danny was asleep, Olivia stayed. They made love for the first time in Blake's small bedroom, tender and slow, learning each other's bodies with reverent touches. It felt like another threshold crossed, another piece of themselves shared. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Olivia traced patterns on Blake's chest. "I want this to be forever," she said quietly. "I know that's probably too soon to say, but I do. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to make pancakes for Danny every weekend. I want to build a life with you." Blake tightened his arms around her. "I want that too, but Olivia, our lives are so different. How would it even work? We'll figure it out." People make relationships work all the time with more obstacles than we have. I love you, you love me, that's the foundation. Everything else is just logistics. It's not that simple. What about your work, your social circle, Danny's school? We live in different worlds. Olivia propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him seriously. Then we build a new world, one that has room for both of us. Blake, I don't care about the logistics. I care about you, about us. Tell me you want to try. Blake thought about all the reasons it was complicated, all the ways it could go wrong. Then he thought about how much he loved her, how happy she made him, how Danny had asked just yesterday if Olivia could be his mom for real. I want to try, he said. I want to build that world with you. The new year brought changes. Olivia officially met Blake's small circle of friends, including Marcus from work who could barely contain his excitement. Blake attended a few company events with Olivia, uncomfortable in borrowed suits, but proud to stand beside her. Danny started second grade with Olivia there for the first day of school pictures, a moment that felt monumental in its normalcy. They had their first real fight in March, about something silly that spiraled into bigger issues. Olivia had surprised Blake by paying off his credit card debt without asking, and Blake had felt his independence stripped away. They argued in harsh whispers after Danny went to bed, both of them saying things they regretted. I was just trying to help, Olivia said, frustrated. Why is it so hard for you to accept help? Because I need to do it myself, Blake shot back. I need to be able to take care of my own life. I can't just be the guy you rescued. Is that what you think this is? Me rescuing you, isn't it? You swoop in with your money and your resources and fix everything. Where does that leave me? What do I contribute? Olivia stared at him, hurt flashing across her face. You contribute everything that matters. You contribute love and kindness and perspective. You make me feel like a person instead of just a job title. Your son has made me understand joy in a way I never did before. But if you're so proud that you can't accept help from someone who loves you, then maybe we need to reconsider this. The words hung between them, sharp and painful. Blake felt panic rising in his chest. He was pushing her away, sabotaging the best thing that had happened to him, all because his pride was wounded. I'm sorry, he said, the fight draining out of him. You're right, I'm being stupid. It's just hard for me. I've been on my own for so long, taking care of everything myself. Letting someone help feels like admitting I'm failing. Olivia's expression softened. You're not failing. You've been dealing with impossible circumstances and doing an amazing job. But Blake, relationships are partnerships. You let me lean on you emotionally all the time. Let me help you practically too. It doesn't make you weak. It makes us a team. They held each other, both apologizing, both promising to communicate better. The fight, as painful as it was, somehow made them stronger. It proved they could navigate conflict and come out the other side. In May, Olivia asked Blake and Danny to move in with her. She framed it carefully, making it clear that Blake's comfort was paramount, that Danny's routine would be preserved. The house is so big, she said. There's a huge yard Danny could play in. He could have his own room, twice the size of what he has now. There's an office Blake could use. We're spending almost every night together anyway, driving back and forth. It would be easier. Blake looked at Danny, who was vibrating with excitement at the prospect. Can I really have a big room? Danny asked. And play in the yard whenever I want. Whenever you want, Olivia confirmed. We could even get that puppy you keep mentioning if your dad agrees. Blake felt ambushed and delighted in equal measure. A puppy is a big responsibility. I know, Olivia said, but I think we can handle it, if you want to. Blake thought about his small apartment, about the cramped quarters and the neighbors who complained when Danny ran around too much. He thought about Olivia's beautiful home with its river views and abundant space. He thought about his pride and his fear and his desire to give Danny everything good in the world. Okay, he said. Let's do it. Let's be a family. Danny whooped with joy, and Olivia kissed Blake like he had just given her the greatest gift. Maybe he had, They moved in over the course of several weekends, Blake's modest possessions looking sparse in Olivia's large house. But she made space for everything, rearranging her furniture to accommodate Blake's worn but comfortable couch, hanging Danny's artwork in prominent places, turning one of the guest rooms into Blake's office, even though he protested he did not need it. "Everyone needs their own space," she insisted. "A place that's just yours." The adjustment period was easier than Blake expected. They established routines quickly. Blake still worked at the hardware store, though Olivia gently suggested he might consider looking for something with better pay and benefits now that he had more stability. Danny thrived with more space and attention. And the puppy, a golden retriever they named Scout, became the center of all their worlds. Blake came home from work one evening in late June to find Olivia in the kitchen, looking nervous. It was unusual. She was normally so composed. "Everything okay?" he asked, loosening his work boots. "I need to talk to you about something. Well, ask you something, actually." Blake felt his heart rate pick up. "Okay." Olivia took a deep breath. "My board wants me to do a major interview with a business magazine. They want to talk about my leadership style, the company's growth, that kind of thing. But they also want to touch on my personal life, because apparently that makes me more relatable or something. I told them no at first, but they're really pushing for it." "What does that have to do with me?" "They want to include you. Well, us. They want to talk about our relationship, maybe take some photos of us together. I told them I'd have to ask you first. I know you value your privacy, and I won't do it if you're uncomfortable. But I also wanted to be honest that this would be good for me professionally. Having a more personal angle, showing that I have a life outside work. It would help my public image." Blake processed this. "You want to go public with our relationship?" "I mean, we've never been secret, but yes, this would be more official. Your name in print. Photos. People knowing about you and Danny." Blake thought about it, about what it would mean to have their lives scrutinized, to have Danny exposed to that attention. But he also thought about what Olivia was offering, trusting him with this decision, valuing his opinion over her professional needs. "Danny's face can't be in any photos," Blake said finally. "I need that to be a condition. His privacy is non-negotiable." Relief flooded Olivia's features. "Of course, absolutely. They can mention that you have a son, but no names, no photos. Then I'm okay with it. If it helps you, I'm okay with it." The interview happened 2 weeks later at Olivia's house. The journalist was a professional woman named Rebecca, who put them both at ease with her straightforward questions and genuine interest. She asked about how they met, about blending their different backgrounds, about their hopes for the future. Blake talked about being a single father, about the challenges and rewards, about how Olivia had brought light back into his life. Olivia talked about finding balance, about learning what really mattered, about how Blake had taught her that success was measured in more than profit margins. The photographer took pictures of them in various places around the house and yard. Blake felt awkward at first, not used to posing, but Olivia held his hand and whispered encouragement, and eventually he relaxed. They ended up with some nice shots. Sitting together on the couch with Scout at their feet, standing on the deck overlooking the river, cooking together in the kitchen. The article came out a month later. Blake read it nervously, worried about how he would be portrayed, but it was positive and respectful. He was described as a devoted father and a good man, someone who had brought balance to Olivia's high-powered life. The comments online were mostly supportive, though there were a few snide remarks about gold diggers and social climbing that made Blake's jaw tighten. Olivia noticed his tension. "Ignore them. People will always have opinions. What matters is that we know the truth." "I know. It just bothers me that anyone would think I'm using you. Anyone who knows us knows better, and everyone else doesn't matter." The publicity did lead to one unexpected consequence. Blake's boss at the hardware store pulled him aside and mentioned that corporate had noticed the article. They were offering Blake a promotion to assistant manager with a significant pay increase. Blake suspected Olivia had something to do with it, but when he asked, she denied any involvement. "Maybe they just recognized your value," she said with a smile. Maybe they realized they had someone special working for them. Blake accepted the promotion, grateful for the better pay and benefits, even if part of him still wondered about the timing. As summer turned to fall, Blake realized he wanted to marry Olivia. The thought came to him clearly one evening as he watched her help Danny with his homework, her patience and genuine interest evident in every interaction. She had become such an integral part of their lives that Blake could not imagine a future without her. But how did he propose to someone who had everything? How did he make it special when she could afford any ring, any destination, any grand gesture? Marcus was his sounding board, as usual. They sat in Blake's car during lunch break, Blake outlining his dilemma. "Man, you're overthinking this," Marcus said. "Olivia doesn't want grand gestures. She wants you. Do something that means something to both of you." Blake thought about it. He thought about that rainy night in the parking lot where it all started. He thought about the moments that had built their relationship, small and genuine and real. He bought a ring, a simple but elegant diamond that cost him 2 months of his new salary. It felt important to buy it himself, to not accept Olivia's money for this. He planned carefully, enlisting Mrs. Chen to watch Danny for the evening, making a reservation at the Tapas restaurant where they had their first real date. But when the night came, Blake found himself too nervous to go through with his elaborate plan. They finished dinner, and the ring box felt like it was burning a hole in his pocket, but the words would not come. They walked to a nearby park afterward, the same park where they had brought Danny months ago. The evening was cool and clear, stars visible despite the city lights. "Blake," Olivia said, squeezing his hand, "you've been quiet all night. What's going on?" Blake took a deep breath. This was it. No perfect speech, no grand gesture, just honesty. "I love you," he said. "I love the way you are with Danny. I love the way you push me to be better. I love that you see me as an equal even when our bank accounts say otherwise. I love that you made me believe in second chances." Olivia's eyes were shining. "I love you too." "Good." Blake pulled out the ring box, dropping to one knee right there in the empty park. "Because I want to spend the rest of my life loving you. Olivia Garrison, will you marry me?" Olivia's hands flew to her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." Blake slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and she pulled him up into a kiss that felt like a promise, like a beginning, like everything good in the world distilled into one perfect moment. They told Danny together the next morning. Blake had worried about his son's reaction, but Danny just grinned and said, "Finally. Does this mean I can call her mom?" Olivia knelt down to Danny's level. "Only if you want to. I would be honored to be your mom, but I also know you had a mom who loved you very much. You can call me Olivia or Mom or whatever feels right to you." Danny thought about it seriously. "Can I call you Mom, Olivia, so I can have both?" "That's perfect," Olivia said, her voice thick with emotion. They planned a small wedding for the spring, just close friends and family. Olivia's parents were thrilled, Patricia already making elaborate plans. Blake's parents, who he had a complicated relationship with, were invited but distant, still not quite sure what to make of their son's new life. The engagement period was joyful, but also full of small adjustments and compromises. Olivia wanted to add Blake to her bank accounts and insurance policies, practical matters that Blake initially resisted, but eventually agreed to. They discussed prenuptial agreements, Olivia insisting she wanted one not to protect her assets, but to protect Blake, to make sure no one could ever accuse him of marrying her for money. Blake signed it willingly. Danny started calling Olivia, Mom Olivia, consistently. And the first time he did it in public, at his school's parent-teacher conference, Olivia had to excuse herself to cry happy tears in the hallway. They decided to have the wedding at Olivia's house, in the backyard overlooking the river. It was a beautiful spring day, warm with a gentle breeze, and Blake stood under an arch of flowers watching Olivia walk toward him and thought his heart might burst from happiness. Danny was his best man, wearing a tiny suit and carrying the rings with utmost seriousness. Olivia's best friend from college was her maid of honor. There were maybe 50 people there, and every single one of them was someone who genuinely cared about Blake and Olivia's happiness. Blake had written his own vows, and his voice shook as he spoke them. Olivia, you walked into my life on a rainy night when I was just trying to get through another day. You were lost, and I gave you directions, but somehow you're the one who showed me the way. You showed me that my story wasn't over, that there was still room for joy and love and hope. You've loved my son like your own. You've made me believe in myself again. I promise to spend every day earning the gift of your love. I promise to be your partner in all things. I promise to always help you find your way, whether that's to a hospital or just back to yourself after a long day. I love you, and I choose you today and always. There was not a dry eye in the crowd. Olivia's vows were equally heartfelt, talking about how Blake had taught her what really mattered, how he had shown her that strength came in many forms, how loving him and Danny had made her understand the meaning of family. When they were pronounced married, Blake kissed his wife with the feeling that every hard thing he had been through, every struggle and loss and moment of despair had led him to this moment. It was worth it. All of it was worth it. The reception was joyful and relaxed, dancing and laughter and toasts that made them both laugh and cry. Danny danced with both his new parents, Scout barked at the music, and Blake held Olivia close and marveled at how life could surprise you. They honeymooned in Hawaii for a week, Danny staying with Olivia's parents who were delighted to have grandparent time. It was Blake's first real vacation in years, and he spent it splitting time between adventurous activities Olivia planned and lazy afternoons on the beach. I could get used to this, Blake said one afternoon, lying on a towel with Olivia beside him. You should get used to it. We're going to do this every year. Family vacations, making memories, living life instead of just surviving it. Blake turned to look at her, this incredible woman who had chosen him. Thank you. For what? For seeing me, for believing in me, for loving Danny, for everything. Olivia rolled over and kissed him. Thank you for letting me. Thank you for being brave enough to open your heart again. I'm the lucky one, Blake Ingram. They returned home tanned and relaxed, and life settled into a new rhythm. Blake continued working at the hardware store, finding satisfaction in his role as assistant manager and the relationships he built with customers and coworkers. Olivia continued running her company, though she was more careful now about work-life balance, making sure to be home for dinner with her family more often than not. Danny thrived in second grade, making friends and bringing home artwork they proudly displayed all over the house. He started calling Olivia just Mom sometimes, letting go of the qualifier, and she never took it for granted. A year into their marriage, Olivia brought up the subject of expanding their family. I've been thinking, she said one night as they got ready for bed, about having a baby. I know that's a big thing to bring up, and I want to know how you feel about it. Blake paused in brushing his teeth. He had wondered if this would come up. Do you want kids, biological kids? I want to have a child with you, yes, but only if you want that too. I know you already have Danny, and if you're done having children, I understand. He's enough for me, but if there's any part of you that wants more kids, I want that too. Blake thought about it. He thought about sleepless nights and diapers and the exhaustion of having an infant. He also thought about first steps and first words and watching Danny become a big brother. He thought about creating a child with Olivia, combining their love into a new life. I want that, he said. I want to have a baby with you. Olivia's face lit up. Really? Really? Let's expand this family. It took 4 months, but eventually Olivia's pregnancy test came back positive. They told Danny first, worried about how he would react to the news of a sibling. You're going to be a big brother, Blake said. How do you feel about that? Danny's eyes went wide. I'm going to have a baby brother or sister. That's right, Olivia said. Danny thought about it for approximately 3 seconds before grinning. Cool, I can teach them about dinosaurs and how to play soccer. This is awesome. The pregnancy was relatively easy, and Blake found himself falling in love with Olivia all over again as he watched her body change and grow. He went to every doctor's appointment, held her hand during the ultrasound when they found out they were having a girl, and rubbed her feet when they swelled in the final trimester. Danny was involved in every step, picking out paint colors for the nursery, helping assemble the crib, suggesting names. They settled on Emma, a name that felt classic and strong. Emma Rose Ingram was born on a snowy January morning, weighing 7 pounds and 3 ounces. Blake held his daughter for the first time and felt the same overwhelming love he had felt when Danny was born, that terrifying, wonderful sense of responsibility and devotion. Danny took his role as big brother seriously, wanting to help with everything from diaper changes to bottle feeding. He would sit next to Emma's crib and read her stories about dinosaurs in his 8-year-old voice, completely earnest in his belief that she understood. Life with a newborn was chaotic, but they managed. Olivia took maternity leave, and Blake adjusted his schedule to be home more. They were exhausted and overwhelmed and happier than Blake had ever imagined possible. One night, when Emma was 3 months old and finally sleeping for longer stretches, Blake woke in the middle of the night and found Olivia's side of the bed empty. He went looking and found her in the nursery, rocking their daughter, tears streaming down her face. "Hey," Blake said softly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Olivia said, looking up at him with a watery smile. "Everything is so right it hurts. I keep thinking about that night in the parking lot when I was lost. I keep thinking about how close I came to just rescheduling that meeting, to never meeting you. And then I wouldn't have this. I wouldn't have you and Danny and Emma. I wouldn't have this life. It terrifies me how easily I could have missed all of this." Blake knelt beside the rocking chair, putting his hand over Olivia's where she held Emma. "But you didn't miss it. You were in that parking lot. I stopped to help. We found each other. That's what matters." "I love you so much," Olivia whispered. "I love you too, both of you, all of us." They stayed there for a while, the three of them, a family formed from chance and choice and love. As Emma grew from an infant to a toddler, as Danny progressed through elementary school, as Blake and Olivia navigated the beautiful chaos of their blended and expanded family, Blake often thought back to that rainy night. He thought about how lost he had felt in those years after Sarah died, how he had been just going through the motions, surviving but not truly living. Olivia had changed all that. She had seen him not as a struggling single father or a hardware store clerk, but as someone worthy of love and partnership. She had loved Danny without hesitation, had embraced motherhood both as a stepmother and a biological mother with the same fierce devotion she brought to everything in her life. And Blake had changed too. He had learned to accept help, to let someone share his burdens, to believe that he deserved good things. He had learned that opening your heart again after loss was not a betrayal but an act of courage. He had learned that family came in many forms, that love was not finite but expansive. 3 years after Emma was born, Blake finally felt stable enough to pursue the dream he had put on hold when Sarah got sick. He enrolled in night classes at the community college, working toward an engineering degree. It would take years, balancing work and school and family, but Olivia supported him completely, adjusting her schedule to be home with the kids when Blake had class. "I'm proud of you," she told him the night before his first class, "for not giving up on your dreams." "You make it possible," Blake said. "All of this, you make it possible." On their 5th wedding anniversary, Olivia surprised Blake with a gift that made him cry. She had bought the hardware store where he worked, not to change anything, but to make him part owner. "I know how much that place means to you," she said as Blake stared at the paperwork. "I know you love the work, the customers, the team. I thought maybe you'd like to have a real stake in it, and before you get all proud and stubborn, the owner was ready to retire anyway." "I just made sure the deal happened." Blake looked at his wife, this incredible woman who understood him so completely. "You bought me a hardware store. Technically, I bought us a hardware store. I have no interest in running it, that's all you. But yes, I bought you a hardware store. Do you like it? Blake pulled her into his arms. I love it. I love you. How did I get so lucky? We both got lucky, Olivia said. The night you gave me directions was the luckiest night of both our lives. They stood there holding each other while Emma played with her toys nearby, and Danny did homework at the kitchen table, and Scout slept by the fireplace. A picture of domestic happiness that Blake had never dared to dream possible. The years continued to unfold with the usual mixture of joy and challenges. There were sick kids and stressful work days, disagreements about parenting and money, moments of exhaustion and frustration. But through it all, Blake and Olivia held tight to each other and the family they had built. Danny grew into a teenager, navigating high school with the same earnest enthusiasm he had brought to dinosaurs and soccer as a little boy. Emma became her big brother's shadow, looking up to him with pure adoration. Blake finished his engineering degree and started consulting part-time while still helping run the hardware store. Olivia's company continued to grow, but she never lost sight of what mattered most. On the 10th anniversary of the night they met, Blake took Olivia back to that grocery store parking lot. It was raining again, a soft spring rain that reminded them both of that first encounter. 10 years ago, I stood right about here, Olivia said, laughing at the memory. Completely lost, soaking wet, convinced I was going to miss the most important meeting of my career. And I was sitting in my car over there, Blake said, pointing, watching you and debating whether to help or just drive away. I'm so glad you helped. Me too, best directions I ever gave. They kissed in the rain, just like they had on their first real date, and Blake thought about the journey they had taken together. From strangers to partners, from separate lives to a shared future, from loss and loneliness to love and belonging. Later that night, with their kids asleep and Scout snoring at the foot of their bed, Blake held Olivia close and thought about how life had surprised him in the best possible way. He had been so sure his story was over when Sarah died, so convinced that he had used up his allotment of happiness. But life had proven him wrong. Life had given him a second chance, a second love, a second act he never saw coming. What are you thinking about? Olivia murmured sleepily. About how I love you, about how grateful I am, about how getting lost was the best thing that ever happened to both of us. Olivia smiled, her hand finding his. We're not lost anymore. No, Blake agreed, pulling her closer. We're exactly where we're supposed to be, and they were. In that moment and in all the moments to come, they were home, they were family. They were two people who had found each other in a parking lot on a rainy night and built a life beyond either of their wildest dreams. They were happy, truly and completely happy, and they knew it. That was the real gift, the ability to recognize joy when you were living in it, to appreciate the beautiful ordinary of everyday love. The rain continued outside, a gentle drumbeat against the windows, and Blake drifted off to sleep thinking about new beginnings and second chances, about how sometimes the best things in life start with being lost and end with being found. He thought about his children sleeping safely in their rooms, about his wife warm in his arms, about the life they had built together from nothing more than directions and hope. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that he was the luckiest man alive. Not because of the house or the money or the material comfort, but because of the love that filled every corner of his world. This was his story, his happily ever after, and it was more beautiful than any fairy tale because it was real. It was messy and imperfect, and absolutely perfect all at once. It was a life built on small moments and big hearts, on choosing love every single day, on never giving up even when things seemed impossible. And it all started with a simple act of kindness on a rainy night, one struggling father helping one lost CEO, neither of them knowing that they were about to find everything they had been searching for. That was the magic of it, Blake thought. You never knew when your life was about to change. You never knew when a stranger would become your future. You just had to be open to it, willing to stop in the rain, ready to help someone find their way. Because sometimes, in helping someone else find their path, you discovered your own. Sometimes getting lost was just the beginning of finding your way home.